Welcome to Prime Life. We call it Retirement 2.0. Leave each episode with tips and new ideas to help you navigate retirement in our new age. It's your time. Make it count.
This podcast is for educational purposes only. It is not intended as medical, investment, or financial advice. We do not sponsor or endorse any of the individuals, companies, products, or services featured on this podcast. Any statements or opinions expressed are of the individual who makes them. We hope you enjoy the episode.
Hello and welcome to another episode of the Prime Life podcast. I'm very excited. I'm geared up, if you will, for today's conversation. Joseph, how are you feeling?
I am energized and ready and raring to go. This is going to be a lot of fun today.
I know. I forgot to wear my spandex, but I think I'm still going to enjoy the episode regardless. Mary, how are you doing?
I'm doing great, and I'm also, feeling pumped for this episode especially.
Oh my gosh, if people haven't figured out our cues by now, I think we're going to dive right in and figure it out. So Mary, if you could do us the honor, please, to introduce our guest, that would be fantastic.
Thank you, Laura. Today, I'm excited to introduce Ellen Jaffe Jones. She is a Get Set Up athlete, and she'll tell us about that, who is an author, get ready for this list, former Emmy-winning journalist, realtor, coach, and vegan runner. That's a lot there. Ellen, welcome, and tell us a little bit about yourself and a little bit about Get Set Up athlete and your journey that you've been on.
Well, thank you so much for having me on. The short story is I've been doing this crazy vegan running thing for 42 years, and people always go like, oh, your knees. And I go, my knees are fine. Everything's fine. A vegan diet typically tends to be very anti-inflammatory. And I got started because as you mentioned, I was a TV investigative and consumer reporter in Miami and St. Louis. And my mom and both sisters had breast cancer, and we became known in St. Louis as the breast cancer family. So we were part of the BRCA1 and BRCA2 gene studies. And so now you can routinely go to your doctor and request those gene studies. And as I like to joke, my genes made it all the way up to the Supreme Court because Myriad Genetics tried to patent, believe it or not, the breast cancer gene and our genes, and they lost that case. So anyway, figuring out the truth about food, how to avoid the breast cancer that plagued our family. This study was serious. They wanted to exhume deceased persons to get at the genes. We did not allow that in our family, but apparently they got enough to make this test successful. I am the only adult female in my family who did not get breast cancer. But before I was able to get the test, and I don't have the gene, I'm a clone of my father, so that's really good for my three daughters. But I lived my life as if I had the gene, and really just, trying to, as reporters are trained, to follow the money. I did all those high protein diets like Atkins twice, the Stillman diets, which predated Atkins, South Beach Zone. And, those were great for losing weight in the short term, but now I have a whole lot of calcium in my arteries and, I have to deal with that. But I'm still able, what you see behind me is 205K or longer age group awards since 2006.
Wow. I think it's, tremendous on a lot of fronts. There's a lot of avenues that we're going to go down with this conversation. Where did the running come in? Talk to us a little bit about that piece of it. It's a phenomenal amount of awards behind you, and congratulations for accomplishing all of that. But how did you tie the two together?
Well, my mother used to say, patience is a virtue. And I always would go, Mom, I didn't get that gene. And so you can burn twice as many calories in 30 minutes of running as you can 30 minutes of walking. So it was a simple math equation. It's like, how can I be a TV reporter where, I eat, breathe, and drink all that? And even when I left television, I became a financial consultant at Smith Barney for 5 years. And then I did media consulting with my then husband, who had been a TV investigative reporter in Miami. So, I just don't have, I figure I'll sleep in my next life. Although I do realize that sleep is an important part of being healthy and not having suitcases under your eyes and having energy to run. So, it's the dreaded R word for runner's rest. So it was just an efficient way. And then, as I kept running, when I was younger, I never placed in my age group. And as I like to joke now, I win my age group just by showing up. I mean, not totally true, because there are some very fast runners. And, back to your question about Get Set Up, God love them. They found me, I guess, on somebody's podcast and said, we'd like for you to be our first sponsored athlete at the National Senior Games, which you can compete in practically any Olympic type of event once you're over the age of 50. And so last year they sponsored me again, and just an amazing organization that really gives older folks a voice. And, I could give you all kinds of examples of, I guess, what we would call ageism, and how, we just kind of don't get our voices out there in a lot of different ways. So kudos to them for sponsoring a whole bunch of us last year and being there in a lot of different ways and connecting me to you, I think.
Wow, as Laura said. uh, the vegan thing, I'm a huge fan. I haven't eaten red meat in 30 plus years. I went completely off the deep end at one point, on the food spectrum. So we'll leave that for a different conversation. This is about you. We did have a conversation with one of the founders of Get Set Up, which was interesting as well. Talk to me a little bit about the books you've written. Right before the show, you were showing up what some might say is a controversial title, but talk to us a little bit about some of your books and what you've written on.
Okay, so these are my adopted children. I'd always wanted to write this book since I was in television news, because I'd eaten a vegan diet while I watched my mom and both sisters go through breast cancer. And I knew how insanely cheap it was. And then when I became a financial consultant, I realized nobody had ever crunched the numbers on every single recipe. And so that's what Eat Vegan on $4 a day does. Up in the corner here, you can see the quarters that are listed. So the actual price per recipe based on ingredients you can find at any big box store like Walmart. And people would go like, "Ooh, are you recommending Walmart?" And I'm going like, "Ooh, if you live below the poverty level of $20,000 a year for a family of 4, you're already shopping at Walmart." And I just wanted to show you don't have to eat junk food to eat a healthful diet. And so this was my first book. My publisher flew down to Florida to meet me, I think, to see if I was real. And he said, this is only going to have about a 3-year lifespan. Just want you to know that. So you will never make money off your book. That part still remains true. He said, it's your calling card. And so find something else to do, like be a personal trainer, which, I did all that as well. Again, just my heart has always been about helping other people avoid the pain and suffering that I have witnessed so brutally in my life. And for the most part, I believe preventable. So that was book number 1. Well, it's still going strong, as you can imagine, in the kind of economy we have. And then my second book, because at the time I was married to somebody who wasn't vegan, and I'm showing you my desk copies here with all the tabs. And so this is How to Eat When You Live with Somebody Who's Not Vegan. That was book number 2. And then book number 3, the paleo craze was coming out, and I was helping be an assistant coach at the girls cross country and track team. So paleo vegan became child number 3. And I basically just veganized the paleo diet. And, one of the Amazon reviews went like, "How dare you put paleo and vegan in the same title, the same sentence?" And I go, it's time for vegans to reclaim this title because there's a guy who wrote a book called Catching Fire, Dr. Richard Wrangham at Yale. And he said it was the cooking of food that made our brains and bodies expand and grow large and healthy. It was not eating meat, as the paleo folks would have you believe. Then by this time, I was wearing my Eat Vegan on $4 a day shirt at races. And somebody came up to me and said, "Oh, you can't run on a vegan diet. You certainly can't race on one." And so it's like by then, the awards were starting to come in, and I thought, I got to write this one. So Vegan Fitness for Mortals. At this point, when I wrote this, most of the books that had been written were written by these bulked up male bodybuilders. And this is really the first one written by a woman. And then the short story is, for a lot of reasons, the kitchen divided guy, it just didn't work out. And we'll just kind of leave that as that. I mean, it could be a whole book by itself, and maybe it will be, but I'm actually prevented from, I don't know, some court order from talking about the specifics of that. So, but you can Google me and find out all that juicy stuff. But anyway, I had 62 years of being with guys who were not vegan. And then I had my first vegan experience, and it was so different, mind blowing, just mind blowing. Because I had doctors and physical therapists who said, "Oh, with menopause, your body's going to dry up like a prune." Well, it did not. And so when I decided to write about it, I wrote the experiential part, and then Dr. Joel Kahn, my co-author, is a vegan cardiologist, and he wrote the medical and research part. And a lot of the information in here was used in the amazing movie, if you haven't seen it, came out a year later, called The Game Changers. And it focuses on college athletes, and it sort of did this visual experiment with them going on a vegan diet and showing the changes in their blood chemistry. And it's visual, just very mind-blowing. And
just to interrupt you real quick, because some people are just listening to this. The title of that book is Vegan Sex.
Oh, right. Sorry. Yes. Vegan Sex. Vegans Do It Better. Dump Your Meds and Jump in Bed is the subtitle my publisher put on that one. So, and we self-published this for the first year because my publisher, can you believe this? He didn't think that it would do well. And when he saw how well it did, he bought the rights. And so it's now under their umbrella. And then my most recent book, I always joke, if vegan sex doesn't work out, Vegan for One, single serving recipes, because we waste so much food in our culture. And so all of those are single serve or maybe servings for two in that. So that's my literary career. I would love to write more books, but it's challenging for publishers. What ended up happening, the short story is, I was on the road speaking at Veg Fest and Health Fest twice a weekend, sometimes every weekend. And then COVID ended that literally overnight. So my vegan boyfriend, who is 15 years younger than me, has been in Sarasota real estate for now 40 years. And he said, "Why don't you just get your license? You grew up in the industry anyway, and join me in real estate." And as I like to joke, being a realtor now helps me support my racing addiction.
Well, it's a great storyline. I love hearing about your books, especially the titles. So just interestingly enough, the last book, Eating for One, or whatever that title was that you said, we had a guest come to Nassau for internally to talk about food waste. The title of his book is Food Foolish. So it's interesting. This was just yesterday. So hearing you say that. But my questions for you are two questions. Can you tell us a little bit about what training looks like and diet from a vegan perspective, of course, for the older athlete? And I say older, you can fill in the blanks there. Just curious what that looks like and what can you share?
And we'll get that answer after a brief word from our commercial sponsors.
Nassau is always working harder to be your carrier of choice. We offer insurance products that can help you meet your retirement goals, such as protecting your savings, securing lifetime income, or paying for healthcare costs. We're dedicated to providing best-in-class service and are keeping things simple, and we'll have your back. We have around 400,000 policyholders and contract holders and have been doing this for a long time, 170 years. But we remain humble enough to always try to improve. For more information, visit nfg.com. Nassau insurance products are issued by Nassau Life and Annuity Company of Hartford, Connecticut, Nassau Life Insurance Company, East Greenbush, New York, or Nassau Life Insurance Company of Kansas, Overland Park, Kansas. Subsidiaries of Nassau Financial Group. Products are not available in all areas. Policyholder counts are for all Nassau companies as of September 30th, 2022, and are subject to change.
CoverRight is the first digital concierge health insurance platform focused on Medicare. Their mission is to make Medicare more transparent and accessible for America's 60 million Medicare beneficiaries. By simplifying a traditionally confusing and complex decision, CoverRight delivers a simple, seamless, and hassle-free plan selection and enrollment experience. Try the CoverRight platform and see for yourself why they've been referred to as the TurboTax for Medicare. Visit coverright.com/podcast to learn more.
Yeah, so, the big concern about a vegan diet, and the biggest question still every vegan always gets, is where do you get your protein? To which I say, does it look like I have a protein deficiency? And I don't even work out my arms. I mean, yeah, I'm pumping my arms when I'm running, kind of thing, and maybe that keeps things in shape. But I do a little, I've tried CrossFit. It's a little too intense for me just because I kind of need to be watched. Because one of the things I've learned in physical therapy, and I love physical therapists because they have kept this almost ready to break down machine in tip top shape just when I thought, I can't run another step. But I have learned later in life that the physical therapists have told me that I have the most flexible body they've ever seen. So the risk of 70 years of being alive is that some of those muscles and tendons are a little overstretched. So that's the risk. He said, the last guy said, you don't really need any more yoga classes. I mean, the stretches are good, but you really should be doing strength training. So everybody's different. Have a team of doctors, physical therapists, coaches, people that can really work with your specific needs and figure you out. Because sometimes, us runners, our brains overtake our bodies and just and our hearts, and we don't listen to like that nagging pain in my ankle. But the good news is that ankle pain was not anything really serious. I just have to kind of back off and rest. So a vegan diet specifically addressing that is a very anti-inflammatory diet. And that's why so many athletes now are adopting it, young and old, because the recovery is amazing. I did half marathon with some vegan friends, and we all just kind of commiserated afterwards, like, we're just kind of bopping around, running around, walking around. We're not in too much pain, but our meat eating colleagues were like, could hardly climb up steps the next day. So that's one of the things that I have observed personally, myself in my own experience and the experience of other vegan runners specifically. As far as, how is my training different than it was years ago when I was younger? I could run every day as long as I did pre-race. I would do a warm-up for like 15, 20 minutes, maybe a mile, whatever that would take. And then I would do these dynamic warm-ups that I learned as an assistant coach. And I was really lucky to work with the head coach of our high school. And she taught me so much. And in vegan fitness, I just wanted to show you, back before QR codes were really starting to be a thing, we actually put these there in the book so that you can go right to my warm-ups on YouTube and my cool downs. And I'm really fanatic about doing both the warm-ups and the cool down stretches after working out. And I think that has allowed me to continue to run basically injury-free. The only fracture I ever accomplished was my third metatarsal arch. Do you remember the barefoot running phase? So yeah, I did that and was still running on concrete. And, what we have to remember there is that our muscles have atrophied over decades being in these things called shoes. And you just can't throw them off one day and say, okay, I'm going to run around even on the beach. That's the thing that did me in. So 2 months in the boot on that one. But, my body just generally has held up very well using a vegan diet. The big difference is I don't run as much. I have even shocked myself about how untrained I was for the last National Senior Games. I thought I was going to totally bomb, and I still ended up with a gold medal in the 4x100s and doing pretty well in some of the other events as well. So just listening to your body is so critical, and you don't have to panic if you have a pain, but you just need to, your body is this great feedback machine, and it'll tell you what you need to know, but you may need to consult with an expert who can help you figure it out.
So for the listeners who are thinking to themselves, this sounds amazing, but I still eat red meat and I don't run, but I want to be healthy and I want to age well. and maybe they're considering becoming vegan, maybe they're not. But what tips do you have for listeners to consider in their lifestyle that could potentially help them age well into the future?
Well, the good news, bad news about technology, it's just a wonderful thing, but there is so much information overload out there. And so who do you trust? So my best advice is look to the long-term vegan doctors like Dr. John McDougall, Dr. Neil Barnard, Caldwell Esselstyn, if you have heart disease, and Michael Greger has a great website called nutritionfacts.org. Any topic you can imagine about veganism, he's got there. So long-term athletes. I mean, I've been doing this for 42 years. In the beginning, the information was not so clear, but I'm really the beneficiary of all the doctors I just listed. I devoured every book they had and was going like, this makes so much sense. I also had a very progressive OBGYN in the 80s who said, we are starting to see some research that shows that a low-fat, healthful vegan diet can be helpful for preventing breast cancer. And now you had my attention. And so, there's a ton of research on PCRM.org. Also, that's Physicians Committee for Responsible Medicine, by the kinds of cancers. I'm a trained cooking instructor for them. So I used to, when I had more time, would teach classes out in our local community. And I saw a woman who was diagnosed with multiple myeloma, one of the more fatal forms of bone cancer. And she hadn't been given very long to live. And that was 20 years ago, and she is still alive and kicking. I see her posts on Facebook. She lost 120 pounds without ever having to count a calorie, loving the food, following the recipes in Dr. Barnard's book, which we would give out in our classes. And you can go online and see if there are classes. And that's what I would encourage you to do, is try and get to some healthy vegan cooking classes. You can do any diet unhealthfully, and veganism is no exception to the rules. So I have guides in my books as well as what is healthy. It's like 2 or 3 servings a day of beans, like whole foods. I mean, I can't believe we actually have to stress this, but there's so much processed food out there. And, I say in my book, Paleo Vegan, what did Mother Nature really intend? What did our ancestors really do? They weren't stomping around on a bunch of grapes and squeezing the juice out and letting it ferment and say, oh, that's healthy. I mean, yeah, maybe 2 or 3,000 years ago, they started figuring that out.
Well,
But really, what do our bodies need? And those are the kinds of questions I like to get people to ask. It takes about 3 to 6 weeks for your taste buds to change. So don't give up, but you do have to go kind of all in, or you will be tempted to fall off the wagon.
I'll just build on that taste bud thing for a second. It's 100% true, because years ago when I stopped eating a lot of things, you start realizing the flavors change. And like if you eat something sweet or salty, it's like, whoa, what is that? So yeah, your body does adjust, but and it's for the better. So let's continue talking about food, because it's a topic everyone loves to talk about, right? Before I forget, like you had a YouTube channel, you're a cooking chef. You didn't even put that in your bio. So like you're like one of the most energetic people I think I've come across in a long time. I feel like I need to up my game. But in terms of your pre and post workout, you were talking about a little bit about your post event where recuperation, recovery. You have a favorite meal? Like, what do you do to like load up before or after? I mean, I have my personal favorite.
Now, an ad from one of our sponsors. Remember when you could trust the news? Well, then check out Walter. Walter is the free, no-nonsense newsletter for grown-ups that comes to your inbox 3 times a week. From current trends, aging in place, travel, retirement, and everything in between, including a dash of pop culture trivia and throwbacks, Walter is a great way to start your mornings and to stay informed. Oh, and did we mention that it's free? Check us out at thisiswalter.com. Get smart. Get Walter.
Like protein thing I do before, but I'm just curious what you would recommend or share a little bit about that.
Everybody is so different. I almost died of a colon blockage when I was 28. So I was on chronic I don't know if chronic is the right word, continual antibiotics for chronic bronchitis, probably undiagnosed asthma growing up in St. Louis, one of the most polluted, stinkiest cities in the country. At least it was when I grew up there. I mean, just air quality, just.
You have the arch, though.
Okay. I just don't even know how. I'm just like, we're going to focus on the topic here. Yeah, I mean, it was a good place to raise a family, and I did do that, so I'll give it that. But and there are these studies that show that our sense of smell, which is very much connected into our taste, take us back to where we were born. And so this study goes into how like people from Pittsburgh like the smell of steel mills and factories, and they will return to those kinds of smells. And I have always felt like, because my parents started bringing me to Florida when I was really young, that I was going to get back here someday, and it's really true. But taste buds are just something you gotta pamper. Some of it is genetic. There's something called the super taster gene. If you hate Brussels sprouts, and I don't, I adore them. I would like to be on a deserted island with them. But if you hate them, that means you have the super taster gene, and you're probably not going to like a lot of dark green leafy vegetables. So the workaround that I learned in my instructions for the cooking classes that I did is balsamic vinegar or some kind of vinegar with maybe some hoisin sauce, soy sauce, that will help reduce that sense of taste that you have that makes you go ew. So just try different things. Initially people would say, "Oh, vegan diet is so boring," and it's like in the animal kingdom, it's pretty much brown, and black. If you barbecue it, then you're at risk for heterocyclic amines and getting cancer from the charred carbon meat. But with fruits and vegetables, there are all these colors of the rainbow. And PCRM, I think, was really the first to put out these big charts that said, eat the colors of the rainbow. These plants were developed so that our mind's eye would be really attracted to them and just eat. If you don't like one, try another. And just so many different kinds of things that you can eat out there. Also, my boyfriend, who I made some veggie burgers and we were out of barbecue sauce. And he was like, "Oh, where's the barbecue sauce? We don't have any ketchup in this house." So I went out and bought both yesterday. And do you know the first ingredient on almost all brands is sugar or what's the one that I thought was off the market? I'm blanking on the name. The super sweet sugar that they put in. Help me out with this, guys.
Saccharin? No,
it's sugar. It's just a supercharged kind of sugar. And I just thought they'd pulled it off the market. It's not a sugar replacement. It's just, I'm going to.
high fructose corn syrup.
Thank you. So, yeah, on both of those. And it's like, and you start reading labels. That's the other thing I'm going to tell you to do is read those labels because, Michael Pollan in his great books, talks about if you can't pronounce it, don't eat it. If it has more than, what's his number, 3 ingredients, 6 ingredients, don't eat it. And sugar is just snuck into all these things now that never used to have sugar because it lights up the brain more than cocaine. There are doctors running around the country showing MRIs of the brain and how it is just so turned on by sugar. It's so addictive. So again, when you get sugar out of your diet, it's like for a while, everything tastes like, a little sour here, but it really is because our brains, our bodies have become so addicted in ways we don't even know.
It's a lot of good information. So I do eat red meat, not a lot of it. I try to eat a balanced diet. I totally agree with, I try to minimize sugar and salt, and all of that good stuff. My undergraduate degree is in nutrition. I'm not a registered dietitian, but I spent many years in the fitness business, which I share a lot on this podcast. Can you talk a little bit about, as we kind of get somewhat near the end of the podcast? Laura kind of touched upon it a little bit. What are the top things that people tend to get on the right track, but then they fall off the wagon? Can you kind of help with that? Because, I agree, like habits take between 30 and 60 days, right, to create. And we get, we sometimes have people, yeah, have a taste of this, or try that, and then it's like, oh no. So can you just um, help with that? Because I think that individuals want to try some of these things, but they're like, oh, I know I just can't stick with it. So what are your tips to help people stick with it, stick with things of healthy living and training, and not fear that, um, not let that fear take over for them to even begin the journey?
Yeah, I mean, even though I said, you got to do this, and I will not use the phrase cold turkey, but all in, shall we say, it is because when you fall off a wagon, your taste buds are like jolted, and it's like, oh yeah. I was looking at a picture yesterday. I was trying to find something for somebody, and I came across a picture of some lobster that somebody had on their Facebook page. And it was just like the lobster I used to eat with my parents as a kid. And all these memories of Florida came flooding back, and I'm just craving lobster. But the good news is, almost anything that you eat can be vegan now. And they make some incredible vegan fish that taste just like shellfish and seafood. So even though these things aren't necessarily as pure and healthy as I alluded to earlier, if you are needing it for a transition or just an occasional treat, it's okay to do the processed foods. And certainly, the Beyond Burgers and all that, it drives me nuts how unhealthy they are. But, if that's what it's going to take, that it's certainly worth it. And, just a word about fish. Would you like some fish with that plastic? There's so much microplastics now in fish. It is so sad. The Gulf of Mexico here, most days it's gorgeous, but it has become a cesspool, a dumping ground, a garbage collection point for the Mississippi River, which I grew up on. So I know what's going down that river and ending up in the Gulf. And there's only so much purification nature can get. So we just had a bacteria high count on a couple of our beaches, and that, I don't know if it's more than usual. Red tide is an issue down here. Just all these environmental things that we have. If you want this planet to be around for your kids or the next generation, if you don't have kids, we've got to take some of this. That is the motivation for me. I have 3 daughters, and I don't know what their planet is going to look like when I'm gone. And that is, I tell people, come up with some mantra like that, whether it's your kids, the animals. There are just so many visuals out there, so many great movies that you can watch, like Earthlings, for health, just a ton of it. I'm sure you guys have probably gotten into some of that. So just, do it for yourself, because most of us do these things for ourselves. And if you do fall off the wagon, just know tomorrow is another day. Get back on. It's the best thing you can do for your health, the planet, and the animals.
Well, I think that's a great summary too, right? I mean, Mary mentioned we had a speaker yesterday come in and talk to us about climate change, the impact, and what the future could and could not look like based on small changes that we can each individually make today. So we appreciate you sharing the insight on that in a number of ways. As we get to the top of time, I'm going to ask Mary and Joseph to share any last thoughts or questions they have with you. Joseph, let's start with you.
I don't think it's a specific question, more just concur with a lot of what Ellen says. You eat well, live well. You got one body. What you put in there is really going to impact how that body treats you. Again, my personal opinion, but
Mary, how about yourself?
I would just, what's your secret sauce for all this great energy you have? I mean, I'm assuming it's diet and exercise and training and all of that, but is there anything else that you can add? Because I'm curious.
Just try and find some good source of aerobic exercise, because it's about blood flow. Whether it's sex or just your heart pumping, it's about getting the blood flowing. And why do I not have so many wrinkles at the age of 70? Have we talked about my age? I mean, I am not perfect in the health department. We all have our issues, but, and I will also say that my least favorite word in the English language is bored. I do not want to be bored. I'm high energy. I have always been a voracious reader and asking questions and being interested in learning from other people. So, whether it's taking classes from Get Set Up Online, which a lot of people do, or going to your gym. Oh, and if you don't know, there are some Medicare programs, and mine is one of them under Part B, where you can get a free gym membership anywhere in town. And I have 4 free gym memberships. OMG. I mean, I can only go twice a week, but I do Pilates, I do Orange Theory, I do LA Fitness, where I can have my jacuzzi and relax. So, just mix it up. Stay interested.
I love that. And you touched on it in a few ways, but I'm going to just go right head on and ask you, what is your why? Ellen, you have this powerful story. You've turned it into a physical, emotional, intelligence diet. You've turned it into action in many forms. But at the end of the day, what is the why?
We've come a long way since my aunt died of breast cancer in our home when I was 5. But I was by my sister's side twice when she went through chemotherapy, puking her guts out. And, that's like, I don't want to be that. It's about feeling good. I feel the best I've ever felt in my life. And I almost died when I was 28 because my colon was so plugged up. We have a fiber deficiency problem in this country, not a protein deficiency. I mean, do you know anybody who's died of a protein deficiency? It generally just doesn't happen. Not to say there can't be issues, but just keep asking the questions of people you trust and that are not in this for the money, because there are a lot of people who do this just because it helps people to feel better and to live as long if we're going to be on the planet for 90 years, you might as well make it some time that you can enjoy, whether it's with your family. And the true why really is for my daughters. The first thing that happened when I got divorced is my ex mowed down the organic garden. So food has always been a battleground for my family. And this is really about just showing that my senior years can be a whole lot different than what our kids are taught is just a normal part of aging. It isn't. Not if you plug into the right answers that work well for your body and your mind.
That's amazing. And we thank you again for sharing all this insight with us today. And for listeners who want to learn more and kind of plug in, as you mentioned, what is the best way for them to do that?
Well, the short answer is I like to say just Google me. But I'm on Facebook a lot, too much probably. I have a YouTube channel that I have a video up try and get it up every Saturday about veganism. And then Instagram, I got my 12,000 followers. It's like I'm going, am I too old for this yet? No, you're not. So if you have any questions, I'm always open for questions, giving talks, whatever, motivating people, however I can.
And your books are available on Amazon, I'm assuming.
Yes. Yeah.
That's fantastic. Well, Ellen, thank you again for your time today and for inspiring us to look within ourselves and to ask questions always to those around us. So to our listeners, thank you for tuning in today, and we look forward to another episode of the Prime Life Podcast. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Remember to subscribe to the Prime Life Podcast anywhere you find podcasts. You can find all of our episodes, contact information, and more on our website, primelifepodcast.com. Stay connected with us. Follow us on LinkedIn, Instagram, Facebook, and TikTok.